All right, guys, so check it out. I've done fight breakdowns and S&C work and looked at other athletes or other fighters training, like Khabib, GSP. I even broke down Mike Tyson's workouts. But I haven't done one on Dustin Poirier. Yeah, the Louisiana King himself.
Dustin Poirier!
With over 7 fight camps and 5 years of working with him, I think it's time that I start to actually break down the off-camp and in-camp training process behind DP. Let's get into it. All right, guys, so here we have it, the full breakdown of DP's training routine from off-camp to in-camp. Now, if you didn't know, I've worked with Dustin Poirier from year 2016 to year 2021. We've had over 7 fight camps together, the last fight camp being the last Conor McGregor fight. So I'm gonna go over the schedule of his in-camp and off-camp. I'm gonna go over the focus points for each individual stage of those camps. And then I'll give you a basic outline of the 8-week progressions that we did once we get into camp, when he gets to Florida and we start working. So from a schedule perspective, right, off-camp skills, primarily he's just getting on the mats, right? No gi drilling, no gi grappling. A lot of the times he'll do some bag work, he'll go into the gym and he'll move around. He has his own gym in Louisiana. So he goes in there maybe 5-10 rounds at a time. He'll do a quick circuit, but mainly it's just to stay in shape, right? It's just to stay active, it's to stay skillful. And he's gonna do some level of light sparring, 5 to 10 rounds, whether it be with his teammates or if he's helping another teammate get ready, he'll do that too as well. But the goal here is just to stay in shape, to stay active, to stay sharp with all of his techniques. The biggest thing with Dustin is that no matter how in shape or out of shape he gets, and he barely ever gets out of shape, he can still come in to a training facility, let's say American Top Team, and spar 10 to 12 rounds and still be fresh because he's super efficient in sparring and he's done it for so long. So he doesn't necessarily have to kill it in off camp, especially from the S&C work. He usually maintains a level of fitness throughout the year, all right? Talking about S&C work, off camp, he's gonna do at least 3 days to 2 to 3 days a week of strength training, and that's just basic general strength work. Whether I program some type of triphasic training or he's just doing general movement patterns, staying in the repetition range of 5 to 8 reps, somewhat of hypertrophy because we don't want to get them too big, but you still want to stimulate muscle. After a long weight cut or after a long training camp, you tend to lose some muscle mass. So we like to build it up a little bit, give him some armor on his body throughout the off camp to get him prepared for pre-camp and then going into camp. All right, another thing that he loves to do is run a lot. So I remember back when I first started working with him, he was running 7 to 9 miles. Now, Dustin has had a history of a hip issue and now he has it worked out. He got a hip resurfacing and now he's feeling way better. But in the beginning, he would still run 7, 8 miles and his hip would be in pain. And I said, why you do that? He's like, man, I'm not gonna stop doing it. I love doing it. So at the end of the day, we managed to get him down to about 3 to 5 miles, sometimes 7, but he would go into, he wouldn't be running on hard surfaces. It would be in the grass or on the turf or even on the track in some points. Now that his hip's feeling better, he can run a lot longer and a lot more frequently. All right, but 3 to 4 times a week, 6 miles minimal, and the heart rate range is gonna be around 140 to 150 beats per minute. So somewhat light, keeping a conversational pace. All right, guys, real quick before we get back to the video, I wanted to make the announcement that yes, I've been nominated once again for the 8th time Trainer of the Year for the World MMA Awards. Thank you to Fighters Only Magazine and everyone who has nominated me once again. If you want to show your support and vote for the Trainer of the Year, click the link down below in the description and I can win it for the 6th time. So would truly appreciate your support by clicking it down below and voting on whoever, along with all those other nominees. So make sure you go ahead and check it out and let's get back to the video. On camp skills training, when he gets into camp, and this is 9, sometimes he'll get into South Florida right around 9 to 10 weeks out. So he has a 2-week buffer to kind of get himself acclimated to the schedule again. But once 8 weeks out starts to hit, he's gonna be going into wrestling class, and that's gonna be 1 time a week, and that would be on Monday. So that's the start of the week. Again, that's a demanding class. That's usually around 2 hours of nonstop wrestling. So he's getting himself in there and wrestling with other killers in American Top Team. So Mondays, again, are primarily doing that. They're doing that in the morning. So AM wrestling, And then in the PM, he's gonna be doing some type of MMA drilling and some light grappling. That's gonna be 3 times a week, primarily Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, usually in the nighttime, okay? Now, sparring, however, once camp begins, usually around 6 weeks out, he's gonna start picking up the sparring. And you're gonna do that 2 to 3 times per week. The third day of that sparring is gonna be more technical sparring, or it's gonna be a mixture of everything. So MMA-based sparring where takedowns are included, maybe small gloves, or they may go from big gloves to small gloves. They're gonna be doing somewhere around 10, maybe even 12 rounds, mixing it up between striking and takedowns. That's gonna be Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Those Tuesdays and Thursdays are hard. Again, those are very intense days, right? So he's getting in there, he's working in the big cage, and he's working his game. As far as the strength and conditioning goes, I have to manage the fatigue there. So on the days that he's actually sparring, I like to consolidate the stressors. So those days are very intense. So we like to do some type of strength and conditioning on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And the primary focus is gonna be strength, power, speed, aerobic capacity and aerobic power, and alactic capacity and power. And I'll go into the breakdown of that later, right? But that's gonna be Tuesdays and Thursdays. Maybe if he needs an extra day to break, I do Tuesdays and Fridays to give him 72 hours to recover. As far as the conditioning goes, 3 to 4 times a week. That's gonna be Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, and then some Saturdays too as well. Sundays, he likes to go for a light jog. When he was in camp, I know that he primarily liked to fast because again, he was having to come down in weight. Those are things that he liked to do psychologically. So at the end of the day, I gotta follow along with what he feels is necessary for him. But in the meantime, I'm still going to allow him to do things that he needs to do to get better and also manage the fatigue there. The recovery methods that he used primarily are going to be sauna sessions 3 to 4 times per week. He would stay in there roughly 20 to maybe 30 minutes. Other things that he liked to do was chiropractic work. So he would go to his chiropractor about 2 times a week there. Again, once his family came to Florida, he would spend time with the family, spend time with his daughter, spend time with the wife, so on and so forth. But that was a good time for him to recover, but still stay active. All right, so the focus points for off camp and in camp. For skills training, stay active, right? Keep working your stuff, try to progress, work on your limiters, help training partners, especially if they're in fight camp, because they're gonna help you once you're in camp, right? So it's like a reciprocating type of value that you get. So off camp S&C, right? We wanna build a base of athleticism, strength, function, fitness overall. Increasing mobility for him was big, especially after the hip injury and after the hip surgery. We wanted to increase his capsule space of each joint so we can improve on his ability to get into positions and be strong in those positions. Enhancing general strength is another key concept because once we can improve on strength qualities, then it can go into the power side of things and repeat that power over a long duration of time. So being strong in close quarters, being able to produce force from all different planes of motion, definitely put yourself in a good position to be as explosive as you need to be inside the cage. All right, now on camp skills. When you're talking about focus points for that, once you get into camp, you want to improve on your fight-specific skill set, right? Whether it be for Dustin, it was primarily based on the opponent, right? Who he was training for. You know, we had from Max Holloway to Khabib. It was different every time, but we still wanted to focus on the attributes that he had, and we want to increase the ability for him to overcome the opponent, right? So that wasn't me primarily, that was all of the skills coaches over at American Top Team. They did a great job. Him, Dia Davis, Mike Brown, Thiago Alves, those guys did a great job of working the skills training over at American Top Team. When it comes down to working on the game plan, that's more of a cerebral approach where Mike Brown would go in there, dictate what's gonna happen, do some studying on the actual opponent, and then put together a game plan so that they can execute when the time comes. On camp S&C. Now, this is my world, so at the end of the day, we want to make sure that I'm improving on his fight-specific conditioning, and I'm complementing what he's doing on the mats in the cage in his skills training. Having lines of communication open was a benefit to me, especially being at American Top Team, being able to converse with the skills coaches on a daily basis, talking to Dustin almost every day to figure out how he's feeling and then formulate the plan accordingly and auto-regulate if necessary. With the in-camp or on-camp specific training, we're gonna be working on the conditioning that is conducive to what he's gonna have to go through inside the fight. A lot of repeat bouts of energy, a lot of lactic capacity training, and then also being able to buffer out that capacity by doing long duration work followed by a short rest period. Another thing that we wanted to improve on is recoverability, right? When you get into camp, the main thing from an S&C standpoint, from a preparation standpoint, is that we have to make sure that they're recovered and doing enough to get the job done and progress each week. The biggest thing that I see with a lot of MMA fighters, especially at the lower level, is that they think that working harder and more frequently is better, and that's not the case. A lot of guys at the elite level know that they have to recover, and if you cannot recover, you cannot train as effectively as possible. So it's not how much you can do, it's how much you can recover from. So we have to work on understanding that and using recovery methods along with nutrition and proper sleep, obviously, but also the programming has to be aligned with the skills training from S&C to the technical work in order for it to come together and enhance the quality of the athlete. As far as these special exercises that we tend to use, we use builders and testers, right? My tester lifts are gonna be your major compound movements that have high transferability into the cage. The other things that I like to do is make sure that whatever exercise we use it with the particular method and stimulus needed to gain an edge, right? So whether it be some type of squat, lunge, hinge, push-pull variation, it needed to make sense for him. So if he didn't have the proper joint prerequisites, or it just wasn't looking good, or maybe it was painful, or it just wasn't technically sound, I'm not gonna spend too much time, especially in camp, teaching him a new movement when we just gotta get the job done. We gotta get the stimulus. So giving him exercises that he could do very efficiently to get that stimulus adaptation, whether it be strength or power, is important, and that's what we stuck with. So Zercher box squats was one of them, glute bridges with the barbell on the hips, floor presses, any type of variation of floor pressing was good, rope pull-ups or any type of pull-up variation, and then also sled dragging variations too as well. We also did some horizontal rowing, of course, but for the most part, I like to use fat grips, especially when he was going against grapplers, and then with sled dragging variations and any type of power movements, plyometrics, med ball throws, being elusive, working on ballistics, and like I said, plyometrics to enhance his ability to get in and out of the pocket and work his boxing like he does. All right, so now let's go over the 8 weeks out strength and conditioning of what I did for 7 camps with Dustin Poirier. This altered and varied depending upon the opponent, depending on how he was feeling. There's a huge amount of auto-regulation that goes into it because we have to make sure that no matter how we're, what's on the board or what's, on the sheet, you need to make sure that the athlete is prepared and is recovered enough to do the work ahead. So a lot of that comes with knowing the athlete, assessing the athlete, and I had to do that consistently with Dustin because, again, with all of this work having to be done, there's gonna be some fatigue there. So we needed to make sure that, one, he was still able to train effectively, efficiently, but not overtrain himself to where he ends up getting sick or injured or so on and so forth. All right, so let's look at it. Weeks 1 through 3, this is usually 8 weeks out to around 6 weeks out. What we're focusing on is strength, power, and alactic power. So that's your short burst of energy followed by a complete rest. And that's for your conditioning. Your strength work, I use the condensed conjugate model. I coined the term condensed conjugate. I've learned a lot through Louis Simmons and the Westside conjugate model. I took the 4-day-a-week model and I condensed it to 2 days or 3 days a week based upon my circumstances and situations with my fighters because they didn't have that amount of time to actually get into the weight room. So I use what I call condensed conjugate, and that's a 2-day-a-week split where I'm gonna be combining dynamic effort and heavy efforts or max effort work in the same day, broken up into 2 different parts of the body, right? So upper body, day 1, will be upper body dynamic effort, working primarily speed strength and explosive strength, and then lower heavy effort. So that's gonna be somewhere around strength speed or absolute strength, depending on the individual and where we're at. Conditioning wise, that's gonna be primarily sprint intervals. So if you look at whatever's gonna be the heavier day, I'm gonna do some type of conditioning based upon that. All right, so lower day, we're gonna do some sprint intervals for the lower body. It's gonna be a 1-to-4 work to rest ratio. So very fast, explosive with some complete rest. All right, now day 2, we just flip it. Lower dynamic, That's gonna be speed strength or explosive strength. That's gonna be somewhat of like your jumps, your plyometric drills, box jumps, broad jumps, things like that. Heavy efforts, again, strength speed. So we'll be working through strength orientated exercises or modalities of training. And then the conditioning is gonna be an upper body focused conditioning. So usually a rower, ski erg, right? We did a Versa climber too as well. The same ratio of work to rest applied there too as well. Moving down, when we get to week 4 to 8 or 5 weeks out to 1 week out, the week before the fight, we're gonna deload at 5 weeks out. Every single camp, Dustin starts to feel the fatigue set in at 5 weeks out. This was based off of not only just experience, but also what we saw from an HRV reading, right? How he was sleeping, how he was recovering. So I needed to make sure that after the second camp, I started to put this in, not only because I saw it with him, but I saw it with about 10 or 20 other fighters right around that 5 weeks out, especially right when they start that 4 weeks out mark where they start to pick up their sparring. That's when I saw that I needed to make sure that we had a deload. With the deload, you're gonna bring down volume by about 40 to 60% of overall volume throughout that training day. The intensity is gonna be brought down to 10 to 15%. We can maintain somewhat of that intensity. Conditioning wise, some type of aerobic capacity work. I like to do Mapatone running, so using 180 minus your age, and then use that in a 3 to 5 mile increment, keeping your heart rate lower in that conversational pace, improving on your aerobic capacity, and also helping your recoverability and overall blood flow. 4 weeks out to 3 weeks out, now that's when we're gonna start to peak. So day 1 is gonna be full body dynamic effort. I usually like to use contrast sets. You can use French contrast. I've also used potentiation clusters for conditioning purposes. You're gonna be mainly focusing on explosive power and repeat power bouts, right? The conditioning is gonna now focus more on the capacity side of that alactic conditioning. So now the work to rest ratio, the rest is lessened. You're gonna do a 2 to 1 or 1 to 1 work to rest ratio. And as far as the work overall, again, you can do sprints. I like to use a lot of prowler sprints. You can use med ball variations. You can use even battle ropes. You can make it sport specific and have them hit the bag. What I did with Dustin primarily was the prowler, right? He used to push that sled up and down many a times. If you watch any of the countdown shows, you've seen him pushing that prowler. That's because we actually did that stuff. It wasn't for the show, trust me. Day 2, same concept. After 4 to 3 weeks out, we're looking at 2 weeks out. Now it's a taper, right? So we're bringing down everything. We're making sure that we're still maintaining our speed and neuromuscular efficiency. So speed intervals, sprint training, short sprints with a little bit longer of rest this time. Med ball variations, box jumps, a lot of dynamic movements that are a part of the speed of the actual sport. So I did want him to get that going. He loved doing that too as well. So from a mental standpoint, it actually helped him feel more explosive and feel ready to go when the time comes for the fight. Like I said, conditioning wise, I also like to do 1 lactic capacity session 2 times before the actual fight. Now this is more sport specific, so this is fight specific circuits. Usually this would be where we would integrate some of the skills training with Mike Brown, Tiago, and Daya, and we would come together and just go through these intervals on a 3x5, or most of the time he was fighting 5x5. So it would be a 5-minute round, right? 5 total rounds, and then we get the 1 minute off, just like the fight itself, right? The goal for in between rounds was that I wanted to see his heart rate drop at least 30 to 40 beats in that minute, and he exceeded that every time. So when it comes down to his ability to recover in between rounds, he's top notch. His VO2 max was sitting around 62, and that's really good for a mixed martial arts fighter. Not to mention that that's not really the major energy system that he uses, but it does show that his ability to take in oxygen and utilize it is efficient, which is important. As far as alactic capacity, I still like to do that too as well. That's gonna be 2 times a week. And I kinda intersperse that with the actual explosive power movements. So instead of just doing a straight conditioning portion of it, we will combine the 2. So if he's doing prowler sprints, he may be shadow boxing in between and then getting right back to it. So again, the overall training duration of time goes down, You're looking somewhere around 30 to 45 minutes tops with this training because I want him to recover for his skills training to get ready for the fight. And as far as aerobic capacity, he still did his light runs, and a lot of this was just to basically bring down the weight so that he can get ready for the weight cut. He also liked to do it just to clear his mind, another way to have active recovery, again, to help him prepare for the fight itself. There it is. All right, guys, so there you have it, full breakdown of the time that I spent with Dustin Poirier from right around 2015, 2016 to 2021 with over 7 fight camps with him. I mean, the most memorable fight camps that I've ever had with any other fighter, the things that I've been able to accomplish as a coach, some of the most memorable times as a coach, seeing him succeed in the things that he's done. And I truly appreciate all the time spent. I want to say thank you to Dustin by far for giving me, you know, the ability to coach and to giving me the opportunity to coach him throughout his career. And he's still going strong, man. So I love to see him keep going at it. Tremendous man overall, and obviously a great fighter too as well. Hope to see him. He'll definitely be in the UFC Hall of Fame one day. But I hope you guys like this video. If you want to see me do more breakdowns of other athletes, fighters that I've been able to coach, let me know by hitting the comments down below. And if you like the video, just show me some love by hitting the like button. If you like Dustin, show me some love, hit the like button too as well. And I'll see you guys next time. Here we go. Peace. Wow.